hot take, cracking the spine of parentheses, your own, with 4 exclamation points, paperback is fine. Welcome to Shoulda Books, the podcast about all the books you should have read by now. My name is Jonathan, and today I am joined here in the mail room for this mailbag episode by the one and only returning champion, Will Witwer. Will,
What's
welcome
up?
to the show.
Hello. How we doing?
We're doing good. We were just in the Patreon segment talking about Michael's, the store.
Me going to Michael's in my unemployment.
we talked about that.
Well,
and,
I won't say much more, but I cannot. It is an unspeakable amount. If you want to hear me describe going to Michael's, truly an unbelievable number of times.
Do you know the people working there on a first name basis at this point?
I recognize some of the cashier people now, but I feel like that no one seems. Like, I hate to say this, but it's just like it's a big box retail job. Like, everyone seems pretty dispirited, I would say.
But you're bringing them joy. You're bringing No, you're harassing them?
No, I'm not harassing them. I'm asking them to do something. They do it. They do a good job. They're nice. It's not a problem. It's like they're doing a good job.
Retail servants.
It's just like they don't seem thrilled to be there, and I don't really blame them.
Unlike you are thrilled to be there.
I mean, honestly, the number of times I went, I'm actually not.
How many times... You keep saying it's a lot of times. I feel like I don't know what a number, like what is a normal amount of time? I feel like more than once a week is an abnormal amount of times.
And I went 5 times in a week. So, yeah, I agree. It was a bad. I figured it out.
No, that's fine. That's not strange.
I figured it out, and everything's good now. And I hung up these pictures, and it's really good.
Well, I can't wait to see the results. And I also can't wait to hear your takes on the hot takes that the listeners, the listeners, the watchers, the fans of the show have sent in some of their hot takes on books, some of their some questions, some comments, some general thoughts. But before we get into that, I've got a few questions for you.
Yes,
so kind of a lightning round.
Sure.
Of book related questions that I am going to hit you with. First of all, what's your favorite classic book?
The first one that comes to my mind is Madame Bovary.
Oh, okay.
By Gustave Flaubert.
Is it just because you like saying Gustave Flaubert or what?
No, and that's also that's pretty anglicized. I don't know how to say the French pronunciation.
Gustave Flaubert.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But it was just a book I read in high school, and I had a teacher who made it exciting. I thought it was funny, despite having this like tragic sort of thing to it. Like it's sad and funny, and about the limits of romanticism to some extent. Anyway, big fan.
Favorite guilty pleasure book?
God, there were so many in my youth. It's like I feel like I don't read as much lighter fare these days. So I'm sort of pulling from I would say 2 things. Number 1, Animorphs, obviously.
Okay.
They're obviously written for children, but there's a very dark story. They're child soldiers.
Never read them.
The kids turn into different creatures to fight aliens who live in people's heads. Anyway, Animorphs is crazy. It's really wild. There's like 50 books. The other thing that I think of is I read a lot of Star Wars novelizations when I was young. Yeah. I was really into reading the Star Wars extended universe, which makes me like, again, the coolest guys ever lived, obviously.
Totally did, yeah.
And so I was reading a lot of those, and there was one that I have currently on my shelf called Tales from the Tales of the Bounty Hunters. They did a series where they would like dramatize. They did like Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, where like they'd take characters in the bar, the Mos Eisley Cantina, and they'd like give them their own adventures. And then also they did that with the Bounty Hunters in Empire Strikes Back, which obviously everyone knows.
Right.
They didn't really do anything. IG-88, Bosk. Who else?
Can't forget about Bosk.
Bosk is cool. Who else is there? I can't.
This is a lightning round.
I can't remember who else is there. But the point is that they're really cool. They're fun, like short story, like pulpy tales within the Star Wars universe.
You walk into a bookstore, not a Michael's. You walk into a bookstore. Where's the first place you go?
First of all, I'm baffled it's not a Michael's. I'm so confused.
That's your entire concept of store is Michael's.
100%. I've been there so much. So where I go first is the question?
Yeah. You walk into, since you love big box stores, you walk into Barnes & Noble.
Well, so I do like to look at like a staff recommends type, beat.
Fucking teacher's pet over here.
No, I think it's nice sometimes to read what people have written, and I enjoy, even if I don't buy them, I like seeing what the staff has read. They often put a lot of like new books they think are going to sell up front. And I don't know, I kind of like to check it all out. Like, it just depends on the Barnes and Noble and like how big it is and stuff. But I can picture the layout of several. But the main thing is like I will look at sort of the new things, but often if I don't like if it does seem like it's all like YA or whatever, like I'll go somewhere else. Like I will check it out, but I'm looking to see sort of literary fiction and shit, and that tends to not get displayed as prominently. Because people aren't buying it.
Until now. Until they watch this episode.
No.
You're going to change their minds.
I don't think so.
Michael's is going to start selling books. It's going to be great.
Honestly, they should.
First literary crush. That could be author, or that could be character.
That's a hard question. Because
so many. Hard to keep track.
Well, God, I mean, there was definitely a Star Wars X-Wing novel where like they like these pilots fuck, and I like that female pilot, but I can't remember her name.
Wow, can't even remember her name.
But
interesting.
That's not really neither here nor there. It was just like you're reading this kid's book, and then there's just like actual sex in it. That's
how
like,
spicy was it? Was it graphic?
Not that graphic, but there was actual intercourse.
God, when you say it like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's a lightning round. I keep forgetting. Current literary crush. You got
one? What man. I don't know.
You can plead the fifth.
I don't know. There's just I don't know. Pleading the fifth would sort of imply like there's something wrong with me having a crush. There's sort of like maybe it's an underage author, and I don't want to say that.
Oh my God, why would you go there?
I'm just when you think of like what would be wrong about liking an author. Like it doesn't have to be It doesn't have to
be an author. It can be a character.
I know, but the thing is, I feel like I haven't read a lot of books where
there's female characters.
No, there's been that much like good. I mean, I don't know. I honestly can't think of an answer, but I am thinking of one of my favorite things from book club, which is sort of unrelated, sort of related. But there is in this book Bowl Away, which includes a sequence where there's like a molasses flood, which really happened in the East Coast.
Boston molasses flood.
And
God, I want to do a full episode on that.
It's so sick. Anyway,
it's not what the podcast is about.
Bowl Away is a book about a bowling alley that is around there and a bunch of different characters that I don't remember that well. But the main thing that I remember from it is that a woman flies with her tits. She used her tits as wings. And that has really stuck with me. And so when you say literary crush, I did think of that.
It's the woman with the winged breasts. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I don't know how it works, but it was very exciting to me.
But you'd like to find out.
And I brought it up a lot when we talked about it at book club. To the extent that people were maybe getting a little tired of it.
To the extent where all of a sudden that book club stopped meeting. It was weird.
No, we were celebrating our 8th anniversary this month.
Okay. We're going to talk about book clubs later.
Great.
Okay. Final question. Book that pissed you off.
I mean, oh man. I don't feel like I have a good answer here because like I tend to want to finish things, and I don't have that many strongly viscerally negative reactions to books. There's an N.K. Jemisin book called The City We Became.
Okay. I don't know.
N.K. Jemisin has written a bunch of highly praised science fiction, fantasy stuff, and I have liked some of her other work, but this book, it's about fighting the evils of New York City, where each borough is incarnated as a living human being, and they all have names that are related to the borough.
Okay.
And it is just not. It is very ambitious, but it is not very good, and it did kind of piss me off. I did not finish it. It is like there's a whole thing with like they're fighting evil monsters in New York, which should be cool. But again, the boroughs personified thing, like really, I did not like.
Are they personified in a way that deals in perhaps, shall we say, stereotypes?
I would think so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would think so. I mean, I have read it. I don't remember that well, but in my memory, yes, there's very much stereotypes, and it's playing on the sense of New York in a way that I don't have any connection to. And like, I like books and stuff set in New York, but this didn't really make it like, I don't know. I just really don't like that book.
And what would, if you were going to do kind of an impression of some of those stereotypes, maybe what would that look like?
Hey, I can't do it. I really can't do it. That's just like sort of a Fonzie impression, which I don't think is in New York.
I wonder if there's any Fonzie fanfic. There's got to be.
I'm sure there's confident there is.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the listeners before Will, cancels himself. Let's start things off. Meg writes in, how to get back into reading as someone who used to love but now hasn't read a book in like 10 years.
This is such a good question because I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if you know, there was an Atlantic article about approaching a post-literate society.
Oh, yes. And, I talked about it in last week's episode, the Odyssey episode. I talked about that article quite a bit.
Yes.
So check that out if you haven't.
Yes, and I think that sorry. I'm losing my train of thought here.
It's okay. We're in a post-literate society.
No, right.
Anyways,
yes, there we go.
Yeah.
So the post-literate society thing is a concern, and I think that there are many, many people who used to read, especially as kids, and you get to be an adult, and the idea of devoting your limited free time to, depending on your responsibilities, that can be a daunting thing. And then also you might want to do it, but it feels like it takes too much work, right? Like, I personally find being in a book club to be helpful to have a deadline where I want to go to a social event where then we're going to talk about it, and I feel like obligated to finish so that we can talk about it, even if I don't love the book.
Right.
So that's helpful for me. That said, I had a friend like who started the book club with me who she like hated like not having to be able to choose what she read and didn't find it motivating. Really? And so I do think that people differ on this.
Right. Yeah. I think if you are trying to get back into reading after not reading for a long time, I think try to make it as fun as possible. Like what sort of books did you used to like reading?
Exactly.
Like when you were a kid and you had that one book that you just could not put down, you read it in a couple days. Like, what genre was that? Was that a mystery? Was it like an Agatha Christie murder mystery? Was it fantasy?
Yes. I was going to say that there's a lot more in the like fantasy space that is not necessarily difficult to read, that like isn't necessarily like and I think those books are great. There's a bunch of fantasy series, like I like Game of Thrones a lot personally, but like there's a bunch. I know nothing about the romantasy books, so I can't recommend those, but those obviously are very popular.
Right.
Like I feel like whatever gets you to do it, do it. Like what I'm trying to do in my time, where I now have a lot more time to myself, unexpectedly, is that I'm hoping to dedicate sort of like a full hour a day to reading because I have time and I like doing it, and I'm reading The Grapes of Wrath right now in addition to a book club book, and I keep being like, well, at least I'm not in the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl seems like it's sucked ass.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is one of the great things of reading is you realize it puts your own situation into perspective.
Absolutely. But no, I think that you have to like give yourself time where it's okay if you like need to pull out your phone or whatever. But like, if you're like, I want to do this, then make it easy for yourself. Get one of those. There are devices, there are apps you can brick your phone where you can be like, I for an hour my phone's not going to buzz, and then you can like there are systems you can set up for yourself
for sure, and also like,
and it's okay if it doesn't take immediately.
Yeah. Everyone's going to have a different path back into it, but I would say make it as fun as possible. Choose the most fun sounding book as you can, and also consider audiobooks.
100%.
Pop on an audiobook when you normally would listen to a podcast, or when you would normally listen to music or something like that. Just try a book.
I think that's great. The other piece of advice that I have that I got from a Defector Media article, big fan of defector.com, I'm just a fan.
Not sponsored,
but no, not at all. Yeah. But they had a piece about like how can I read as an adult, kind of similar question. And one of the things she recommended, Kelsey McKinney, former host of Normal Gossip, is having the Libby app on your phone because you can not only get audiobooks for free, but you can also have a book on your phone. And one thing, if you want to be reading more books, like guess what you have on you at all times? Your phone.
That's right.
Now, if you're like me and your possessions are sometimes in jeopardy of disappearing, then remember to carry a book with you at all times can be kind of tough. So like a physical book. But if you just have a book you're reading on your phone for pure pleasure, if you do that instead of doom scroll, or that instead of like you're at the line for the bank, terrible example, no one goes to the bank anymore, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
what's the deal with bank lines?
You're in a line, you're waiting for food or something.
You're at the dentist.
You pull out your phone, and if you just start reading a book, I think that would also be a way of like rerouting yourself.
Definitely, it's almost guaranteed to be a better use of your time than whatever you were probably going to look at.
And you'll have a book on your phone. You can read two books. You can have one that's physical, and you can have one that's just on your phone for like whenever you have a spare second. Like there are ways of doing it.
Yeah.
You just have to make a plan.
Well, Meg, I hope that helps. Thank you for that question. Next up, I'm gonna kind of combine two questions. So I'm gonna ask one and then I'm gonna ask the other, because for me, the answer is related. So first question, Migro11, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, asks, what's your opinion on DNF? Obviously, DNF, if you don't know, did not finish. What books have you DNF'd? And then the second question from Emily M001, have you ever disliked a book recommended by a guest of the show?
Ooh.
So I will go first. There is a book this year that I DNF'd that was recommended by our mutual friend and former coworker, Kaylin Hertz. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Yes. I didn't finish it.
Wow.
I didn't finish it and I didn't like it. And here's why. I got the audiobook and the story starts when they are youths. They're like preteens almost. And like it was so horny for like teen boys being horny for each other in like the way the narrator
doesn't sound so bad.
Well, the way it was narrated, I was like, I'm not enjoying this.
Wow.
I'm not enjoying this. And maybe I would enjoy the book more if I read it in physical format. But
that's very funny.
But I did not enjoy it. And I also was just like, I don't know, it felt overwrought of like, I don't know. There's something about just taking an old story and being like, I'm going to kind of shamelessly modernize it. And maybe this one isn't like shamelessly modernized, but it felt more modern than the source material maybe warranted.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard of it. Didn't she write Circe also?
She did. Yeah, I haven't read.
Which I've heard good things about. So I mean, people are allowed to disagree. First of all, second of all, like it is funny to specifically call out Kaylin. Like, I hope you post this clip and tag her. But second of all, like, I think not finishing a book is actually a reasonable use of time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
One of my sort of core operating beliefs that I've had since an author gave it to me was that like you should really take seriously like what you're reading. And this is Anthony Doerr before he wrote All the Things You Cannot See. I may have talked about this when I was on the show before, but he came to do a poetry reading, and he talked about how if you read one book a week from when you're 18 to when you're 80, that's only like a couple thousand books.
Right.
So you like really should be, if you're not liking a book on page 50, like don't force yourself to finish it just because. I think a lot of the ones I haven't finished are like, they were kind of hard. Like I need to go back to Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, which I really was enjoying. But then
that's a DNF for me.
I needed to get my passport changed. I lost my passport in an insane way when I was in Spain studying abroad. And so I had to go to the consulate at a long train ride to Valencia. And I on this long train ride did choose to read Game of Thrones instead, and I haven't gone back to Gravity's Rainbow, and I feel bad about it, and it's not because I thought the book was bad, although it is a book where it is more like poetry, where you have to kind of read certain sentences and like accept that the meaning is not necessarily, it's more like interesting ideas, but not necessarily like a clear, cohesive sentence.
It's the IKEA school of meaning where you're gonna have to assemble that yourself. He is not gonna spell it out for you.
I think it's really good, but I do agree that it does put a lot on you. But also, it's helpful to read it where if something just makes no sense at all, you just have to like keep going because the sentences are really beautiful. Yeah. But
I did not, and similar to my last point, speaking of things with teens making me uncomfortable, there's like some pretty graphic descriptions of like child abuse. And that was where I was like, no. Maybe that's why I don't buy DNF books is that sort of thing.
Totally.
Maybe you're okay with it. But,
no, I don't even remember that part. So
interesting. It didn't stick
but
out.
I didn't finish it.
Didn't stick out. Well, maybe you didn't get to
maybe
it.
Maybe it's at the end. I don't remember that. I remember there being a whole thing about erections and rockets and
Oh well, yeah. I mean that's most of the book. Yeah. But yeah, I think I got maybe 130, 140 pages into it or something like that.
I think I got further than that. So I did. There was child abuse I just don't remember, but like there are definitely books I haven't finished. But not mostly it's not because I'm like hating it. Right. I try to like most things I read.
Jill asks, do you have a book that you always said you were never going to read or had negative assumptions about prior to reading, but ended up loving it? If so, which one?
Man, said I was never going to read. I don't know.
It's tough. I've been thinking about this. Like, I don't know. There's very few books that I've said that I've like forsworn.
Yes.
You know, like I think a softer answer to this question for me in that it wasn't a book that I said I was never going to read, but it was a book I wasn't super interested in reading. Was Wuthering Heights.
Totally.
And I chose it back when this podcast was part of our former employer, and I chose that one because I was like, it's something you should read. Ended up loving it. I really enjoyed Wuthering Heights, and it kind of surprised me, and it's one of my favorite classics now.
I think, honestly, maybe the answer is like Sense and Sensibility, which I read in high school.
Oh, coming up in the Shoulda Book Club. Stay tuned. Reading that in September.
It's like, I was just some sort of high school boy, and I'm reading this book about these two women, and it's really well done, and I really appreciated it. And it's not that I was like, I never said I would read it, but it was just like, I don't know about like it just wasn't convinced by what it was selling me, and then because I had to read it for school, I ended up really liking it because again I had a really good teacher. So like I like a lot of Austin's work at this point in a way that like I genuinely I don't know that I would have predicted that. Yeah.
Well, shout out Jill. Jill also included a story that I will briefly paraphrase about when they were working at a library. There was they found a copy of Stephen King's Christine and opened it, and toenail clippings fell out. Which I'm shocked you're still reading. I might have sworn off books forever if that had happened to me. But
as long as it didn't touch me, I think it'd be okay. It would just be gross. It's a little gross, but like if they don't brush my thigh, I'm not losing sleep over that.
Well, what I want to know is like, were they put there intentionally, or was
I doubt it. But it's funnier to imagine like
you think it was intentional, or you think it wasn't?
I think it's some man.
Well, yeah, I mean,
obviously, probably,
yeah.
Was reading Christine and clipping their toenails, and then like accidentally left some in there, which I don't, you think would be crazy, but like people do all kinds of stuff.
Well, I guess that's a glimpse into how you live your life. But
people do all kinds of stuff, man.
I feel like I am so mortified of anyone finding my toe or fingernail clippings that I am like, it's like cleaning up after I've committed a crime. I'm like pouring bleach. I'm like, I gotta make sure there's no DNA. So the idea of it getting into a book that I then closed, that I then took back to the public library. To me, it reeks of premeditation.
I don't disagree that it could be premeditated, but it's just like, or is that a thing in the book, or is this just a random, like, it's a bad prank if you do it, because you don't get to see the person you're not guaranteed someone's gonna pull the Christine out. Like, the reason I think it could be incidental is just like, I feel like if you're a person who lives alone, like, you could just see a scenario where like this just sort of happens somehow. Like, I don't think it's that crazy. Like, the idea of it being like, oh, let me put tonus on this book when I won't get to see someone open it. Like, there's no payoff for you. Why would you do this at all in any circumstance? I don't know.
They're sick. They're reading Stephen King. That's why.
It makes more sense to me if it's just like a slob. So I'm team
Let us
slob.
know in the comments what you think.
Hashtag slob or
psycho. Slob or psycho.
There we go.
Let's listen to a voicemail. So this is a voicemail from a mystery caller. This person did not leave a name, did not leave any sort of identifying information. So maybe we could give them a fake name, but maybe that's copyright infringement on another podcast. But anyway, I'm just going to play it.
Hi, Jonathan. My book hot take that I realized recently is that it is way too easy for people to get published on Kindle Unlimited, and it is flooding the market with really subpar writing. Like, I love a cheesy romance more than like as much as the next person, but some of these people on Kindle and on Amazon are rating these books 5 stars, and I'm like, is this really the best book you've read in your life? Is that really legit? And that sounds really mean, but that's my book hot take. It is way too easy to get published online. Thank you.
Well, thank you, mystery caller. I think that's not really that hot of a take, because I think I 100% agree.
Yeah, well, I think that what it is like, you not necessarily publish under any sort of larger imprint. I think that's still pretty hard, obviously.
Yeah.
But publishing online in a way that costs somebody nothing, you can definitely do. I Kindle Unlimited, I'm not as familiar with, but I believe that yes, that you can put things on there where you get revenue if enough people read it.
Yeah.
But you don't get a ton.
Right.
But what I'm aware of, and the thing that kind of makes me extremely depressed, is the like Kindle Unlimited AI of it all. Like, I don't know if you've seen that there was a New York Times reporter, like tech reporter, who like found multiple autobiographies written by AI about them.
Oh my God.
Like there's just books out there that you don't even know. And I think we also know like dead internet theory is something that I think is worth talking about. The idea, there's a conspiracy theory that's obviously not true, but we're approaching it. It's becoming more and more of a thing that's worth discussing.
Yeah, no, I think about dead internet theory a lot. And if you're not familiar, it's basically the idea that at a certain point, the only people online that are posting and then interacting with those posts will just be AI.
It will all be bots.
It'll all just be bots
done by AI, where you can no longer tell. At this point, you can no longer totally tell if something's real or astroturfed or whatever. Yep. But the idea of the dead internet theory is we just approach a point where it becomes so useless that you no longer, even if you're still using online to like buy something, you no longer take the reviews seriously at all. Yeah. And I do think that there are astroturf book campaigns out there to try to get people to, but you read their Kindle Unlimited singles, because like Kindle Unlimited, like you can read a bunch of stuff. Not all of it's going to be great, but if you're just like looking for stuff to read, it's probably a good deal.
Yeah.
There's also people, I think, selling classes about how you can get rich self-publishing on this, which by the way, always the sign of a scam. If someone is like, the way you get rich is by paying me, it's like, okay. Because like that is a great scam, is teaching the class on drop shipping versus actually doing drop shipping.
Oh yeah. Those who can't teach.
Literally, it is true.
Yeah.
They say it in School of Rock.
Yeah. I think, there's just so much slop just all around. And I think whether it's AI books flooding the market or just poorly written.
There's that too, but I think that the poorly written and the AI thing are actually directly linked together at this point. I don't think they can be separated. We can no longer, unfortunately, you can no longer look at a text and know that a human wrote it 100%.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people out there who are like, I've always wanted to write a novel, but I haven't been able to do it. Like, there are definitely people using AI to like publish their own work. And you see there are controversies where people get their deals recalled, and it's the whole thing is it's just, I don't think you can even go like, oh, this is just like some nut who like had the determination to like write a self-published book. Like, hey, I think that's a great thing, you know? But if you're using AI to flood the marketplace with this, it's just like, there's no value to that kind of work. So yeah, I think it's absolutely too easy to publish something in a platform that looks legit, you know, formatted automatically. And like, there have been books that were published with like, you know, prompts still in the text. Like I've seen all this stuff, and I'm just like, it really depresses me. And so I think that there is increasingly the difference between like human generated, like self-published stuff versus AI self-published stuff is just in no way that different. So yeah, I don't like it.
Well, we're fighting the good fight here at Shoulda Books, and we'll continue fighting that good fight after this break. Okay, welcome back. The last call, thank you to our mystery caller, I think leads in well to our next item. Great. This is from Grant Kendrick Parker. They say, hot take, publishing is so hard and selective, any book on a store shelf is worth reading. So kind of the opposite of what we were just saying. I think there's merit to this.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I do kind of think that in the book world, even though they can't really increase the price of it as a commodity, which is a big part of the problem, like people won't really pay more. Like the book prices, I'm sure, have gone up a little, but they haven't skyrocketed the same way that a lot of other consumer goods have.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I would argue that there's just like a genuine trepidation from the industry that's not doing that well financially to like, we can't just increase the price.
Right.
Like people will stop buying books altogether.
Right. Yeah. You look at movie prices in, say, the 1990s compared to now versus book prices.
Book prices have not gone up way.
They've gone up,
way
but
less.
not to the same kind of steep increment.
100%.
I will say that, like, so the publishing industry is incredibly selective, as Grant is saying. I will say, there's a lot of books on the shelves I don't think you need to be reading. I'm looking at Brett Baer. I'm looking at the Bill O'Reilly.
Books.
You know, so like there's a whole. I don't think that's what Grant is saying.
But I tend to agree that like if something is on the shelf of a bookstore you like, there's some that feels more valuable to me than like, you know, but again, talking just self-publishing stuff like
right.
Like I have more inherent trust for it, and maybe that's a bias, but that's because there's so much slop in the one.
Well, I think something that sets publishing apart from other media is that the gatekeepers in publishing, I think, in my experience and the limited experience I have with the publishing industry, is that because there's so much less money and glamour in it, the people who have signed up to kind of make being one of these gatekeepers their lives are kind of doing it for the love of the game.
Totally.
In a way that like maybe a music producer or a distributor or executive or a film like executive, there's a lot of other ancillary benefits to being like a film executive, like sex and drugs, that you're not really going to get from being like an editor or an agent.
Not anymore.
You know? Yeah. Well, fair. Maybe back in the day.
Yeah.
But these days, you know, maybe you'll get to go to some cool parties in New York. But
yeah, that's it.
It's such a smaller world.
There's still I think a sex and drugs element. If you know, there's always cults of personality around certain vibrant figures. But I think overall, you're absolutely right. So yeah, I just have a trust for things in a bookstore, but I would also agree a lot of books in the store, and not all of them are good, you know. But you never want to see some interesting books, go to a used bookstore, you know.
You don't want to see interesting books go to used.
No. You will see interesting books.
Yeah,
you want to see stuff
okay.
that's like not on the shit. It's not like being reprinted. You know, like I think that's always interesting, even though I don't ever really buy those books.
Well, this is we're going off script here. Have you been keeping up with the Anthropic story of them literally just destroying books?
Yes,
printed?
Because a judge told them they had to destroy it.
Which is insane.
Like basically there's this whole copyright AI thing where for a while they were just taking data with no repercussions, and then with books specifically, they wanted to like digitize every book in the world basically, and a judge said that it would preserve. If you preserve the book, it would be like stealing. But if you digitize it and destroy it,
if you digitize it, you are
preserving it.
replacing it.
Yeah.
If you just scan it, you are making a copy. And so
they've literally bought millions of books,
Yeah.
which they put into a machine that scans them and destroys them.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
It's sickening. It's sickening. It also it drives me crazy that everyone is like, oh, Anthropic's the good one. And it's like,
nah, dude.
No, these companies are fucking evil.
No, and I don't want to. I truly do not want to bore your listeners with a long diatribe about my belief in the fundamental lack of stability in the business model on AI. But I truly believe.
Yeah, we're gonna go to a commercial break.
I truly believe that the two main AI companies at this point, the big dogs who connect to all the other
Coke and Pepsi, basically.
OpenAI and Anthropic, who connect to all the other big tech companies in America and are driving the stock market right now of all value.
Yep.
I just don't think that the returns are going to come through. That said, they did just solve some math problems that nobody else had solved.
Oh, that's nice. Goodwill Hunting style.
I just don't believe that the economics are sound. I think that the costs have been subsidized by venture capital money and they're valued way too high. And I think there's going to be a dip. But I just think that the technology will probably still exist. Just these companies, I have no faith in them sticking around. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that, LLMs, for better or worse, probably for worse, are going to be here. But I think that the claims that companies like Anthropic and OpenAI are making are wildly overrated and over promising. And I think we're heading for a crash, and I hope the crash.
We just don't know when it will be.
Yeah, and how bad it will be.
But the thing is, the way that the global financial markets work, these are everyone's mutual funds and stuff are tied up in these AI stocks because they're the thing powering the stock market, which means that it's the quote unquote safe investment. And if it goes down, it will hurt regular people in some fashion. Who knows to say? But the economy will crash, and a bunch of people will lose their retirement.
Well, it's a good thing that the stock market has never had a crash based on the fact of assets being backstopped by toxic assets before. It's a good thing that never happened.
Yeah. I mean, we are fully sort of in Enron territory. I don't want to go into it. I do read a newsletter about this that I'm very invested in. I will not go into more details.
Shout it out. What's the newsletter?
There's a guy named Ed Zitron. He writes a newsletter called Better Offline.
Okay. Shout out.
It's a podcast
all right, let's get back to the questions here. So, Laura Lu Zhu, maybe, writes, as a former Christian who now enjoys reading for fun and with some book clubs, sometimes I miss Bible studies as a more socially normalized place to discuss text of importance and personal reflection. Do you feel like the American ex-evangelical movement is a major contributing factor to the current popularity of book clubs?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't made that connection before. I do think that's interesting. I mean, if I may.
This is sort of your lane.
This is kind of my lane, yeah.
Clear out the way. Here comes the Hulk.
It's clobbering time. No, wait, that's the wrong. Fuck, that's the wrong IP.
Yeah, it's same. He's green though. He's in Marvel. You're pretty close.
I mean, I think that kind of the rise of book clubs is probably bigger than specifically ex-evangelical people or just formerly religious people in general. But I do think that for me, I'll speak for myself. I certainly miss that element. I liked having kind of a weekly place where, I could have a discussion with my peers. And I do think that the appeal of that is the same appeal as book clubs. I think that it probably goes deeper. The reason that we have organized religion is that communal aspect of humanity and us wanting to be together. And so I'd say that the same urge that brings people into book clubs is the same urge that brings people into religion.
But that said, I'm sure a bunch of ex-evangelicals never heard that term, but I'm putting it right in my damn noggin. I'm sure a bunch of ex-evangelicals have started book clubs because it is a way you not all book clubs have to have wine, and even if they do, even if you're somebody who doesn't drink and is non-religious, it's just a thing that you can do across social groups. I very much think that it is interesting to think about being wanting to discuss important texts. It kind of sounds like what you both want, the writer and you, Jonathan, is to basically have like a community college type class or like a salon basically is what you want. What you want is a like where you could gather people that you think are cool and then have everybody like, let's read the Bhagavad Gita, like, this chapter, and then like we'll talk about it. But it's like, people are too busy in the secular world to commit to this kind of stuff. It's not as important,
That's the thing. And that's the thing is that I think that why book clubs are so appealing. And as someone who you've been in one for 8 years?
It's going to be 8 years it's this month is 8 years.
Many happy returns. I think that the older you get, it's just fucking hard to spend time with your friends.
Yeah, and it's a great way to pre-schedule stuff because you got to do at least a month out. Like you're giving a large berth of time, and the way we'd like to do it is like do just a Tuesday night because it's like mostly you aren't gonna make some sort of plan on Tuesday. Yeah, we've had some exceptions where we've changed it, but it's like it's easy enough to be like Tuesday a month from now you're probably not busy. You know? And then once you put it in the calendar, it's like now you got to fucking read this book, which is great.
The tyranny of the calendar comes for us all.
That's called life, brother.
Yeah, it really, because I 24-year-old me would hear this and be like, fuck that, I'm not gonna be like that. But yeah, it just, the older you get, the harder. People have different responsibilities. People have different things going on in their lives, and good luck making plans with your friends with like less than a week heads up.
I will say, side note. Sorry, I literally cut you off, so I feel
that's
bad
okay.
About
it's okay. It's okay. You have the floor. Go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
Oh fuck! Am I even gonna remember what I was trying to say?
I don't know. I sure hope you do.
Let's see what happened. I do believe that what I was trying to say was I do think the Bible as a historical text is also super interesting, and there's a podcast I've been listening to a little bit about that, going through like what historians sort of make of it versus a fully religious approach, and I genuinely find that kind of stuff super fascinating. So I totally get the impulse to want to talk about these big ideas that are in these texts, and also weird stuff about like Jesus' foreskin. Anyway,
what happened to it?
Well, there was a village in Italy that was celebrating this relic, and they got found out, and they had to hide it or something. It's crazy, man. Oh, anyway, I'm listening to. There's a podcast. Oh, fuck, what is the Bible one called? I can't remember right now. But I was listening to a podcast called True Anon where they did a whole thing.
Oh yeah. No, send me that.
I will.
I'll put it on screen.
Great,
right here.
Perfect plug for something that I didn't do, but that is good. Yeah.
We're gonna take another quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. We got more hot takes about books here. First of all, thank you to everyone who sent stuff in. Really appreciate it. And I, don't want to speak for Will, but I'm gonna. We're having a good time.
I'm having a good time. Yeah, absolutely.
You are? Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so Book Geek 809 says, hot take, not every thriller needs to have a twist. What do you think?
I agree with this. I think that there is a over twist culture. The culture's become twisted. Is I guess how I would say it.
Keep it twisted.
Yeah. God. But yes, I believe that M. Night Shyamalan and other people have influenced the idea that there needs to be, like, I think a twist is great if you can pull it off.
Yeah.
But like, I like a thriller that just commits to the thing that it's going to be too. Like, I think I can't think of a good example. I wish I could, but I can think of more movie examples. But like, things where like there's a thing at the end where you're like, this was sort of a cool idea that you had, but you didn't really make the movie about that,
Yeah, I think. First of all, I don't read a whole lot of thrillers, but I love watching thriller movies.
Same.
Like, I think you need lowercase t twists to keep your story interesting.
Yes.
Like, obviously, you need to have unexpected things happening. But yeah, I do agree that, if you
can get too clever.
You can get too clever. And
where it's like, oh, this all fits together this way. And then it's like, oh, this is annoying.
Because then you feel the hand of the author in a way that
takes you out of the story.
It takes you out of the story, and you see people kind of acting like automatons because they're just doing this and they're doing that so that they can line up to pay off this twist. And it's like, if it's all just building to that. Also, we're at the point where it's really hard to come up with an original one. Well, you know, it must have been amazing in the 90s.
Well, and even earlier, like if you look at earlier movie titles, they could just title everything whatever you want. Like it is true that I think that in a mass media culture where we've had a lot of twists and then things repeated, I don't mind if people repeat something from somewhere else if it's fitted, if the whole piece works, you know?
Yeah.
But what I don't like is here's this crazy twist that isn't really supported by what came before it. Yeah. And I think that is a thing that definitely happens. I wish I can think of one example though.
As soon as we stop recording, you're going to think of like 5.
I think so. Yeah.
And I'm not going to put them in here.
But I will also say, I think if you're in the mystery genre, you do kind of need a twist.
Yeah.
Like,
you need
the
you need
mystery
some sort of
genre
surprise.
is so specifically like, you know, I just used to read those Agatha Christie books as a kid and like, you know, Hercule Poirot is like, all right, motherfuckers, like, let's go. Like, I've got the thing. And like, sometimes you figure out who it is, but as you know, you're supposed to be fooled enough.
Right.
And then when it's revealed, it's supposed to feel inevitable.
Yeah.
Like, that's what a good ending does.
Yeah.
In all cases, whether it's a mystery or a thriller or not. So like, I hate when the culmination of a work is like undermined by a final stupid idea.
Yeah. I think that, you know, writing a good whodunit is one of the hardest tasks you can do as a writer, because it is so like you have such tight strictures of the genre, but like you have to walk this tightrope where you are giving enough clues that the audience could figure it out if they are paying attention in just the right way, but not make it so obvious, but also not withhold things where it's like, oh well, I never could have. Like I remember watching fucking Scooby-Doo. And I would remember episodes where when they would finally pull the mask off, it would be someone you've never heard of that was not introduced earlier in the episode at all. And I would be like, what the hell? I never would have guessed it was that guy.
Yeah, not satisfying.
We've never been introduced to him.
You want to have the opportunity to guess.
Right.
Yeah.
It becomes kind of a Deus Ex Machina.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that there's room for a certain kind of Deus Ex Machina in some genres where like and that it can be justified, but like it's mostly can be frustrating when it's just like, oh, here's the author moving the plot, you know?
Yeah. Angelina Ballerina 37 says, was looking for old episodes of the pod. Are they available anywhere? So this podcast started at Try Guys, and I made several episodes there, and I do not have the rights to those episodes. That was not part of the deal. So maybe they're still available on Second Tribe. I don't know.
I think so.
It's nice to think.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. So if you want to find out, if you want to track down those episodes about like Wuthering Heights and Fahrenheit 451, go with God. But they're not going to be here on this channel or this RSS feed or however you get this podcast. So that's more of a public. So there's not really anything for you to add there, but that was more of just a public service announcement because I've gotten that question a lot, and I've never really made that explicit. Okay, let's go to Stompy Dunce says hot take: cracking the spine of parentheses your own with 4 exclamation points paperback is fine. I was not aware that this was even a thing that people cared about, but it has since been brought to my attention that this is a raging debate in the book space of like, is it okay you get a paperback to crack that spine and so that it folds easier. It's never really crossed my mind. How do you feel about it?
I mean, I'd say I've put my books through hell, especially as a youth, eating and reading a lot.
Clipping your toenails into them.
Well, yeah, and that copy of Christine, obviously. But and I didn't get to see anybody see them, but I hope somebody got really freaked out. Anyway, no, I genuinely feel like paperbacks are just going to get more beat up. And so I don't like it when you bend like the front cover so that it doesn't close. I think that's more annoying on a paperback. I don't care that much about cracking the spine as long as you can still close the book.
Yeah, I think that's where I land on this debate is you should still be able to close the book because there's nothing more annoying than than having.
But
that.
if it like bulges a little and it's like there's a line down the spine, like look, maybe it looks worse than displaying it, but like it's a paperback, like it's gonna decay much sooner than the other ones. It's gonna be dust
at some point.
I mean, so is everything.
Ashes to ashes.
I mean, hopefully we get there soon. This world.
One Michael's trip at a time.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I
every day you could go to Michael's, and every day it's one less day you'll have to be alive.
The official slogan of Michael's. Speaking of Michael's, how do you feel about the fact that there's no apostrophe on that S?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
It
implies that there's a bunch of people named Michael.
Well, maybe we could Google this, but I'm guessing that the owner was named something Michaels.
So I'm not going to Google it, but I
imagine that.
Imagine that. A number of years ago, I got a bee in my bonnet about the fact that big box stores and corporations in general seem to have been dropping the apostrophes from their S's, and so I kind of looked into it, and it basically just comes down to it saves ink. And it saves, if you're building a lighted sign on the side of a Michael's or a Ralph's, if you will, you have to pay for that little illuminated apostrophe. And so they've just been doing away with it. And I think that's when our society started really going down the toilet. But what I will say...
That was our first side.
That was the first side. Yeah. Up to then, everything was great. I will say a company that is holding on to that apostrophe with white knuckles for dear fucking life is Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yes.
You cannot lose that apostrophe.
Well, you understand why.
Yeah,
you understand why. Also, they don't need neon signs in Dick's Sporting Goods in the same way that I guess Michael's doesn't have neon signs.
Well, no one has neon signs, but if you're driving, on a freeway past a strip mall and it's nighttime, you're still going to see it lit up.
Yeah.
Those things aren't free.
That's true.
Yeah, do you think what do you think the boardroom at Dick's Sporting Goods is like? Do you think that they ever make those jokes, or do you think they have just such a strict policy that is anathema?
I think that the people don't do it very much.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, they've heard it all, but it's also if you were just with your coworker maybe and you're talking off the cuff, maybe you do. Mm-hmm. But I don't think in a meeting situation that would be tolerated.
It would be uncouth.
It would be you are being a child. This is our brand. Mm-hmm. We need to make this brand get more money.
Yeah, you don't get to the C-suite by making those jokes.
I mean, I would assume not. Yeah. But you never know. Maybe there's a gregarious CEO who's I'm sure is a Republican donor, by the way. I'm confident the CEO of the experiment 100% is a Trump donor. But maybe he's a fun guy who
maybe
likes jokes about penises, and so
maybe they're a woman. Will maybe the CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods.
Do you want to make a bet?
No, because I feel like
I am confident.
All right, hold on. Let's look this up.
I am confident based on nothing, not because women can't be CEOs.
It's not nothing, Will. It's just misogyny. All right, let's see.
Because women can't be CEOs because it just doesn't seem right to me. I just don't believe it. Also, most CEOs are men.
Well.
Oh, am I wrong?
The president and chief executive officer of Dick's Sporting Goods taking over the role in February 2021. This is the AI overview, unfortunately.
Sure, yeah.
So let's go to dicksportingoods.com. It is Dicks.com, I have to say. I've never actually gone to the website.
It's a good website.
Dicks.com. Lauren R. Hobart is the president and CEO of Dick's.
Then I'm guessing, I'm totally wrong. I take it back. Women are allowed to be, they can have it all. They can work, they can have children, they can do it all.
I'm glad you're giving them permission, Will. That's very big of you.
Society needed to hear from me on this issue. Yeah. No, I'm confident that Lauren J. Hobart is not tolerating that kind of besmirching of the Dick's Sporting Goods name. I don't believe Lauren J. Hobart would stand for that.
Okay, we have strayed from the grace of God. Let's get back on. God, where are my notes? What is going on? Okay. One last thing from Jill. Shout out Jill. Jill sent a 3-parter. So here's the third one. Hot take: the cover matters. I unfortunately judge a cover hardcore. I go off of genre and cover alone. Parentheses. I also never read the book synopsis before I start the book. There's a lot to unpack there. First, let's start with covers. Judging a book by a cover? What do you think?
I think definitely to some extent. I mean, a cover instantly gives you marketing signifiers about the book. Telling you how classy it is. To some extent, Like I bought a
whether there's going to be like a woman flying from like
from
her
breast.
boobs.
Well, which by the way, I can't get over this. She flew with her boobs somehow, and it wasn't like a major part of the narrative, but I could not get over it. And it's truly insane to avoid the molasses flood. I believe. Don't quote me on that though. But like pretty good. Fun novel, fun romp about candlepin bowling in New England at the turn of the century, I think. No, who knows? I don't remember
Yeah, you were kind of focused on something else.
Well, how can you fly with, and how big are like?
What was the cover? I assume it could not have been the cover of the book.
Oh no, this is not an important part enough to be on the cover. No, I wish.
What was on the cover then?
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember.
Okay, but yeah, I think it's just human nature. You're gonna judge a book somewhat by its cover.
And it's like an art object. Like I like when a cover is cool that I think is cool, but also if a cover isn't particularly spectacular, I don't need it. Yeah. You know, I would say that like, but I do think that it matters. It affects how you're perceiving and purchasing and whatever. So I don't know. I've personally think it's the cover matters, but it's not necessarily the only thing.
I think the more interesting thing to unpack in this comment is saying that they never read the book synopsis, because it's not like that's what I'm.
Oh, I definitely look at the synopsis.
That's what's sealing the deal for me. I'm reading that dust jacket.
I mean, I respect people who are like, I'm going by the cover and maybe the author and maybe the blurb, and I'm not going to read the summary because I don't want it spoiled for me. Like I can respect that.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
But I do personally feel for a lot of stories, I'm not as spoiler phobic as a lot of people.
Oh, I'm terrified. I'm fully phobic.
People always act like
it
ruins. Well, not fully phobic.
Spoiler phobic.
There we go.
Yes.
No, but I do feel like spoilers just don't ruin. Like if something is good, it'll be good even if you know the basic outlines.
Wrong.
And I do think in a twist-based culture though, where everyone is competing for more and more twists that are breaking the mold in some way. Like you get to this point where the spoiler really is the thing, because that's the juice of the thing, is only the twist. But that to me means you're not reading the best, piece of literature. Like that said, yes, it is annoying if people like, spoil major plot points sometimes. Yeah. But like, and I try not to do it in front of people. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I don't personally think it's going to ruin it. And I actually think a lot of times you need to have a little of it spoiled so you're like intrigued enough to read it. No, like there's so many books out there. How do you make a decision? Like if you're not reading the synopsis and are you just going by the cover? Like that's crazy to me.
I mean,
and recommendations, I assume.
Yeah, shout out Jill. That's wild. Just saying like, like the cover. Woo, let's do it. Yeah, but I hate spoilers so much. I think I think this is one of my primal wounds as a child, was that a lot of the kind of classic twist things got spoiled for me.
Is that true? Like what?
Before name something.
I don't know.
Sixth Sense. Yeah. Spoiled.
Well, but that was spoiled for. I've never seen it, but it's been spoiled for me for a long time. That was sort of inescapable.
Fight Club also spoiled for me.
Yeah, that's tough. I did get to see Fight Club without it being spoiled.
And I'll never get to have that experience.
Yeah, it's a cool movie.
I'm glad you had that.
I like that movie.
For what reasons, Will?
Well, I'm not one of the toxic fans.
I'm not one of those.
I think it's a satire about masculinity.
Yeah. No, that's definitely one of those movies. And have you read the book?
No.
The book is really good. The book is like makes the satire a lot more clear.
Totally.
Like I don't think you would read the book and be like, I should start a fight club.
I think honestly the only reason people did is because Brad Pitt looked so freaking.
He looks so good. He's so fucking hot in that movie. Yeah. Unfortunately.
And he does get to beat up Jared Leto.
Yeah, I mean,
which is nice.
It is nice. It is funny, and this is something that I had a friend in college who was like. He was so proud of himself for like figuring this out, but he's like, Jared Leto gets his face destroyed in multiple movies.
It's because he has a pretty face, and it's him having it destroyed is more. Also, he's been canceled recently.
Well, I think so, that's the thing is that like I think our
he
instincts,
knew he had a pretty face. I think he was maybe a little too forward. Shout out to him.
Yeah, this is an anti-Jared Leto podcast.
Well, I mean, the allegations are terrible, and also his acting isn't good either. But even if it was, it wouldn't be good.
Did you ever see Mr. Nobody?
No. I saw the movie Nobody starring Bob Odenkirk.
Not the same.
It was the first movie I saw back from the pandemic.
Mr. Nobody is probably the most pretentious movie that has ever been made. And I stand by that statement. But it stars Jared Leto, and it's bad. Okay. I think we're gonna have to wrap that up. We are unfortunately out of time. There's some comments I didn't get to. Unfortunately, thank you to everyone who sent things in. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode. I certainly had a good time. Will, I hope you had a good time.
I had a good time. Yeah, maybe we talked too much about Michaels and didn't get to all the questions, but ultimately,
we did spend a lot of time talking about Michaels, and there's fans who didn't get their questions read because you wanted to talk about Michaels.
Ultimately, though, Michaels is a comforting store where they have some substandard products. Anyway, listen to the Patreon.
Well, I was gonna give you kind of a platform to plug away, but you've kind of already wasted it on the mic.
We're on Instagram, I guess maybe TikTok too, and I think Letterboxd as well. I've been trying.
You're boxing. Okay.
I'm going to be boxing now that I have been unemployed. I've been watching a lot of films, a lot of harsh films.
And a lot of harsh films?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I watched There Will Be Blood. I watched Casino. I watched Taxi Driver.
Oh, man. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All for the first time.
You doing okay, buddy? For the first time?
Yeah, I've been doing good. Those movies are really connecting with me.
Drive.
I love Drive, honestly. I haven't seen it since it came out.
But,
but no, I follow me at W Witwer. I am hoping to be posting about my attempt to learn to dunk.
It's happened.
I bought a phone tripod.
Did you really? Wow. Okay. This is something.
Happening.
Actually, I didn't know this. This is breaking news for me.
Yeah.
You're gonna dunk. You've been teasing this.
Let's back that up. What am I gonna do? I'm going to attempt to dunk.
Okay.
I'm going to be taking videos of me being like it's day 18 and doing some squats to warm up and then getting into it. But the thing is, the reality is I have a tough odds of learning to dunk, and it's going to be a long journey to get there.
Sounds like a limiting belief.
It is a limiting belief, as they say in Scientology.
Yeah, actually, I've got a book for you.
Huge shout out to my guy David Miscavige. But
I wish I knew that reference.
He's like the CEO of Scientology, basically. Okay. Anyway,
the CEO of that is a man.
What I really recommend is the book Going Clear, not the HBO documentary. The book is really good.
Okay.
But yeah, follow me at W Witwer, and this was fun. That. Well, I'm saying it again in case people didn't hear me. On all platforms.
Right. Yeah. Will, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I had a blast.
Again, thanks to everyone for sending in things. Thank you for watching and for listening. And as always, keep reading.